So we're doing a documentary for Barnsley College about how social media affects young people. And one form of social media, like the dark side of social media, as I like to call it, is cyberbullying.
Yep.
And I know you had some experience with this, dealing with students that have suffered from cyberbullying.
Yep.
So the first question is, how long have you dealt with cyberbullying?
We've had a couple of instances of students, but on the whole it's been pretty okay, to be honest. But I do also admin a number of internet groups or Facebook groups, like selling sites and things like that, and it's rife. Cyberbullying is rife on there, and certainly a lot of young people take part in that, and certainly a lot of young people are also victims of that. And that's been going on for years now, but seems to be increasing, to be honest. People seem to be desensitised, and whereas before they may have thought about what they said, it now seems that maybe they don't. And the first thing that they think about, they'll type, regardless of the repercussions.
Okay. So when was it kind of like first brought to your attention?
Well, I first became admin on sites about 2 or 3 years ago, and to be honest, I wasn't aware of how widespread it was.
Yeah.
So the general public, unfortunately, I don't think appreciate that maybe when you say things to people online that it's bullying.
Yeah.
And what you tend to find is somebody will say something, and then it's kind of like a mob mentality. Everybody will join in. And all of a sudden you've got one poor person and maybe 20 or 30 individuals all harassing this individual, private messaging them, private messaging their work, private messaging their families. It is really quite a problem out there. So not just with students, but just everybody in general, really.
So it's kind of like a gang of hyenas.
It seems like it. You can watch it, you can see it happen. Somebody says something, usually somebody gets the wrong end of the stick, and then kind of challenges them. And when you read it, when you're kind of nice and calm, you think, well, they didn't actually say that. But the whole of the mob will follow that one individual and attack.
That's a good point, because I've known, I've not known an instance, but I've heard of an instance where one person will say something and they say something about maybe black people or homosexuals, and then someone takes it the wrong way and attacks them, and then it's kind of this whole herd of kind of, you're racist or you're homophobic. Yeah,
because somebody ends up defending themselves against something they haven't actually said. And that's very difficult, because people are then attacking them for something they think they've said or something they think they've done, rather than something that's actually happened. And that happens a lot.
Yeah, especially in the young society, like teenagers.
Yeah, definitely.
So from all your experience of dealing with cyberbullying, what has been the worst case you've ever experienced?
There's been loads. I think probably the latest one that's kind of happened, and that's the other thing. People seem to forget that the internet has the capability of spreading around the world, so it's not just you that's dealing with that. It might then spread around the world. People can screenshot things and send them. There are websites that are designed, or rather Facebook sites that are designed purely to instigate arguments and people to go and join in. So they'll tag and say, this is someone's profile, this is what they've said, and you'll find that hundreds of people suddenly jump on that profile and get involved. You've also got the press now. I don't know if you've noticed, but online a lot of internet stories are coming out. So they're spotting things. So the latest one that I've seen involves a dog grooming site, where somebody recorded last Friday that their dog hadn't been returned. It seemed like a private dispute between the grooming owner and the dog owner, but because that dog owner filmed part of a conversation, not the whole incident, and uploaded that onto Facebook, within 4 or 5 hours, that person's business had been ruined. So you had sort of 4,500 people leaving on their Facebook page. Obviously, they've spent a long time building up. It is their business. Yeah. There are people that work for them, giving them 1-star ratings, bombarding them with abuse. Their telephone number and their address was given out. People were messaging their employees. People were messaging their family, all because of one 1-minute clip. That's people around the world.
I've definitely seen stuff like that where people people who are quite angry at something
Yes.
and take something the wrong way to prove their point, they will just take one snippet or one side of the argument and then, pound.
Yeah,
Pound
because
it into
logically we weren't there. We are not aware of the full facts. Yet you find that because people are behind a computer screen, they will take one small part and all of a sudden become the world expert on it,
Yeah.
have an opinion, and therefore they feel that they are entitled to say what they like. And unfortunately, you have to think about the repercussions of the person on the receiving end of that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was another one where there was a video that did the rounds of some boys that had beaten up another boy. And there's a lot of racial undercurrents at the moment, particularly with immigration and things like that. And there was an awful lot of comments on there that were illegal. But there were a lot of comments on there from adults, quite funny in terms of, I hate bullying, but I'll kill them. Or what is it you're doing here? Do you not see the difference between, what you're saying, what you're doing? And the shocking number of comments about what they would do to these individuals, who in fact were children. They were 14. In the news report, it said that they were 14. There were people saying they should be burnt at the stake, they should be crucified, should be in prison for life, their whole family should be murdered. These are children. And these are adults saying this about children. And it seems that because it's on the internet, that filtering process somehow dissolves. And that's concerning.
So you think it's less about people... Because usually when you think about cyberbullying, you think people attacking someone for an unfair... because their opinion maybe they're not in the trend or something, or maybe they're not popular or something.
Yeah.
So instead of rather that, it's being overtaken with kind of like people attacking the opposite side of the coin. So, like you said, bullies. These boys beat up another boy.
Yep.
It then went from, okay, they should be put in attention or maybe excluded, to people taking it way far out of proportion.
Giving their telephone numbers out, giving out their addresses,
Yeah.
harassing their family, taking photographs of their houses. This is not normal behaviour. And it's something that's way beyond. The incident I mentioned before about the dog grooming business, that's an incident between a member of the public and a business. If they're not happy, there are channels to go down, trading standards, small claims court. But the internet seems to kind of bypass all of that, because you can get a far bigger, far better reaction if you can go viral with a complaint. And that does seem to kind of be where people are wanting to go. And then, that's where the bullying comes in.
And especially because if you give one person that argument, that's all they're going to take from it.
Yeah.
And then they're going to think, I know everything about the story, I know everything, so I'm going to go in there.
Thousands of people know the full story from a 1 minute long clip of a phone conversation. Nothing before, nothing afterwards, nothing pertaining to the event. They've only heard one side.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the main thing. That's the main problem with bullying now.
And this is, I must come across incidents like this. I don't know, at least once a week. At least once a week.
Yeah. All right. So obviously you've gone through that question. So kind of what you talk about you talk about victims of cyberbullying. Like, what's their kind of like mindset of it? What's their what's going through their thoughts?
I think it would be very difficult to kind of. It's going to be up to the individual, isn't it? How they feel. Everyone's going to take things differently. There's a story out. I don't know if your viewers are aware of this, but again, the power of social media. There's a page that was set up about 3 days ago, a 14-year-old girl who was being bullied, including cyberbullying, who took an overdose.
Yes.
So her family have recorded that event and her in a coma in the hospital and taken photographs and stuff, and she's now woken up, and they've said that she's going to admin that and then become an advocate for bullying. So it's very difficult to kind of say there's a blanket, this is how a victim feels, because everyone's different. But I would say to people watching, how would you feel if you hadn't necessarily done anything wrong and someone points the finger at you, and before you know it, people around the world are bombarding your family, your friends, your workplace, your college place with untruths about you, and you don't have the same platform to voice your side? I would imagine it would be scary. It would be intimidating. It would be very, very difficult for anybody to deal with that without being affected in some way. It must be horrendous.
Also, like you talked about there, we're doing this thing where we show some students videos,
Yeah.
and they react to them, and this is going to fit in with this interview. We show them a clip of a girl called an American girl called Becca, I think her name is, and she committed suicide because she was being heavily harassed on social media.
Yeah.
So, is it the feeling that that when they point the finger at you and they kind of like judge you, does that make them feel like inadequate?
I think we've all had instances in our lives, and I certainly have at school, where, you know, you're made to feel uncomfortable by people, or that you are downright, you know, or outright bullied.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've all had that, and it's an awful experience. But this generation now are experiencing something that no other generation really has had before. So you have to put down, you know, this is this person and they are being bullied by an individual or by a small group. Now the internet and social media, you can be bullied by thousands of people around the world. Surely that's going to intensify your feelings, the negative feelings, and you can see that, you know, some people aren't going to be able to cope with that as well as others. I think it's a very dangerous thing. People, I don't think, when they type things down, necessarily realise somebody's going to read this. This is going to affect somebody, and the outcome of that could be quite severe on that individual. And I think that's what people need to think about, because it's not a good place to be.
So, like, they don't think about the consequences?
I don't think they do. I don't think they even think that they're bullying. They have an opinion. You know, freedom of speech, that's always kind of put out there. You know, there's freedom of speech and there's common sense. There's freedom of speech and there's the law. So discrimination. There's also, you know, that you have to have empathy in a situation. You have to have a certain level of intelligence to realise that actually I'm only seeing a small part of this. This may not be the full story. Unfortunately, you see, you know, hundreds, thousands of people, that doesn't seem to happen, and they just jump and join the mob.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think personally it's become a big problem with kind of like manipulating people emotionally for both attacking and being attacked?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I can't say worldwide or nationwide or locally. I can only talk from my own experience, but it's definitely becoming more common. It's like a line's being crossed, the Pandora's box has been opened. You know, people would go on the internet and wouldn't necessarily say what they think, and now, you know, they see other individuals do it, and it kind of like, well, that's okay because they're doing it, so why can't I do it?
Yeah.
And it seems to be that, and as more and more people grow up and see this, because people forget, Facebook, you can be 13.
You could be any age.
Yeah,
Facebook, really.
well, you can. You should be 13, but obviously you can be younger. Now, adults need to set that example in society. Adults are kind of, this is the barometer of how society should behave. If you're seeing people being pulled apart on social media, well, then that becomes the norm.
Yeah.
I have a 12-year-old daughter, and obviously she's not allowed on Facebook, but she does use Instagram. It happens all the time. The bullying, it just seems it's less about putting photographs on there. It's now about social acceptance.
Yeah.
So every photograph is looked at to see if there's anything on there that people might be able to pull apart. Or, you know, who you have on your bio dictates whether you have an argument in class the next day. Or, you know, chats are opened up and the most horrendous things are said. And these are 11, 12, 13-year-olds. Well, that's come from somewhere. They're seeing this and they're emulating this behaviour. That will then, as they grow up, obviously filter into other social media sites. And how are you going to police that? You know, how are you going to police it? And how, when you are growing up in that environment where you are judged on how you look, how you talk, who you're friends with, how you behave, how fat you are, how thin you are, whether you're, you know, this colour, that colour, your hair's too long, your hair's too short. There's a lot of pressure on people, and people, unfortunately, will pick on something that somebody, you know, finds makes them quite vulnerable, and that's quite a scary prospect.
Especially with many platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and like asking, you can choose to be anonymous.
Anonymous,
Which is even more reason for people to think they can, they're not going to know who I am.
Yep.
I'm just going to attack them and not feel bad about it.
Well, for my generation, you know, when I was at school or at college, that's where I went. When I went home, I was at home. You know, I could be myself, I could let my hair down, get into my pyjamas, do what I wanted to do, and I could leave that kind of life behind. You've now got, and I'm talking young people here, I'm talking 12, 13, who their life is played out on social media. So there's no kind of getting away from it. You can't say, well, that's my persona in school. You've got to carry it over into your public life because you're being monitored by other individuals at school. It never goes away. And that must be very pressured. You know, my makeup's perfect, my hair's perfect, my hair's the wrong style. Oh, what am I wearing those shoes for? You know, or I like the wrong film actor, or I like the wrong musician. And it's constantly trying to fit in and conform. And that must be putting a lot of pressure onto people, you know? You remember when we got spots when we were teenagers?
Yeah.
You got it at school, but you went home and it was fine. Well, now it's on Instagram, or it's on Facebook, and, you know, it's all this kind of thing which might not necessarily be seen as bullying, but it still kind of has the same thing. It still causes the same kind of feelings because you're trying to fit in and people are judging you constantly.
Okay. So, over the years of kind of like Facebook and there's kind of like more places to do it, do you think it's gotten better or worse in a way? Kind of like, do you think kind of like social media, bullying as a whole, do you think it's got better or worse?
I think definitely, I mean, when I was at school, bullying wasn't taken as seriously.
Yeah.
So like in the real world, I think, you know, definitely there's a lot more awareness of the dangers that you know, pertain to that. There are a lot more safeguarding things in place. And I think people feel more comfortable saying stuff because, I mean, certainly from my experience as a tutor, people will come and talk to me and we can deal with it.
Yeah.
But then you've got the social media aspect. And I think there's been kind of a situation where people know what bullying is and they don't like it, but maybe don't realise that they're doing it online. They're taking part in it. By sharing a story that you haven't actually got the facts on, you're exposing somebody potentially to more abuse. By commenting on it with an opinion which you think you should share with everybody, again, you could be causing an issue. And then you have people that are just out there to troll, that just want to cause upset. And we've not necessarily ever had that before. So in the real world, probably a lot better, but this is the problem. The real world and cyber world are no different.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a real situation where people forget that the cyber world is still the real world, and that the people that are the victims in the real world are still the victims of cyberbullying that don't feel any different just because you can't see them.
If people knew that they were bullying, do you think they would stop, or do you think it's in their personality that they...
There's a great saying, and it's, you know, bad things can happen when good people do nothing. You will see, and it's kind of like a snake, yeah? Something is said on an internet site or on a Facebook site, and you see the victim straight away being singled out. And like I said, the mob then join in. Usually, you know, that will continue. However, it only takes one or two people to put the other point of view across before you see the sway in the public opinion go back, and the victim is then kind of like, you know, given a free pass. So it needs people to kind of step up and say, well, hang on a second, you're taking what has been said as gospel. Is that actually true? How about this? And you then see a total shift in the way that that person is then treated. And then other people jump in and defend them. You know, so I think that's something that, you know, maybe people ought to consider, that, you know, it's not necessarily always the bad in there. There are people that say good things. But if you don't kind of challenge it, and you don't kind of put it up for what it is, which is bullying, it will just continue.
So, last question is that you talked about kind of like trolls.
Yeah.
So, has social media affected a certain type of people now, in which there are now just these people that are accepted as they are just people who bully? Do you think it's...
Well, you can be anonymous. In what other aspect in your life can you be anonymous other than online?
Yeah, okay.
Because I don't need to, if I don't know you, you don't need to know my name, but you can still see me.
Yeah.
I can still see your reactions. Yeah, and most people aren't evil. You know, most people have got a heart and do have empathy. However, I can call myself whatever I like online, and I can behave in any way. If I don't see your reaction, yeah, it's not going to affect me as much. So social media has kind of affected people in that way, and it's certainly something that's never happened before, in that you've got trolling sites of people that are now out there looking for a potential victim. Someone gives them the Facebook URL or, you know, thread that they're talking on, and they join, and they kind of bully en masse.
I know, because it's like a part of a fandom. Say if you like a certain show, like say you like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, and then you go on kind of like a video, and it's speculation or something, and then you go down in the comments, there'll be someone with a name called Walter White, and then just saying, no, take for instance, if you're working on a Walking Dead prediction video, and then you scroll underneath, and there's someone, who's, they got an icon, their photo is Walter White, and they can name themselves Walter White, and they say, actually, The Walking Dead is terrible, and it sucks, and Breaking Bad is a way much better show. Is that kind of like a form of, like you were like people saying anonymous? I'll say it. But it's kind of like that fact that they have the freedom to be whoever they want. They feel like they could just impersonate people and then use that to attack like other fandoms. So kind of like, not only did it just personally, but you can try and group a lot of people into this one big group.
If you're a clever individual and you understand a little bit about human psychology, you can very easily get a lot of people kind of backing up what you've said, even if what you're saying is not correct.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're anonymous, I'm sure we've all kind of, if I was invisible, I would do this because no one would know it was me.
Yeah.
I'd get away with doing it. Well, it gives you that. It gives you that anonymity. You can be invisible and nobody knows it's you. So you can get away with doing things that you couldn't do in the real life. And clearly people kind of do that. I think my concern is, the younger generations coming up don't necessarily understand that. And then this kind of behaviour becomes normal. And desensitising people, So you go on the internet and see some of the images you see, well, we'd never have seen them 10 years ago. But people are becoming desensitised. People are becoming desensitised to behaviour. And, will that affect people psychologically in terms of, well, I see it all the time, therefore it's not a big deal to bully someone. Well, who knows? That's got to be something you've got to consider. That's why, it's nice when you see other people jump in and say, hang on a minute, this is not acceptable, this is bullying, and kind of just putting it out there for what it is.
Right. Well, thank you, Mandy. You gave us a lot of good insight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, nod your head. Okay, yep, nod your head.